I've been creating content full-time for more than 3 years now, and during those 3 years I've grown and learned more and more. And as I've learned more and more, I've also felt the need to get more gear, more things, more expensive stuff to help me make those videos, to help me make it look good. But in reality, a lot of the time it's just ended up making excuses for me instead. So I haven't ended up making as much as I could have, just because I thought it might not look good enough if I don't have the newest piece of gear or the newest thing. In reality, I only need 8 things to make the videos that I make for my business, for my YouTube videos, for my Instagram, and for my course. And those 8 things are what I want to talk about today. Some of them are specific on what I use, and some of them I really don't like as the piece of gear that I have, but because I have it and because it does the job, I just use it anyway. So I'm briefly going to go through some of them, and some of them we're going to talk a little bit more about. The first one is quite obvious. You're going to need a camera of some kind. It could also be a smartphone, but for my case and what I make, I need a professional camera. I like cameras, I love nerding around the gear, and I love knowing how to use a camera. That was what I spent the first year of these past 3 years trying to learn, how to properly use the camera to make my content look as good as possible. And now I'm kind of dialing it back. So this is not actually the camera that I record on, obviously. I record on the Sony ZV-E1, and this is my girlfriend's Sony a6400. But if you're just starting out, I'll tell you, the camera bodies that you can get nowadays, all the way from the budget to the high-end categories, are more than capable of getting you a very great image. So I will focus less on what specific camera it is that you're getting, right now at least, if you're just starting out, or in general, if you're thinking that you can't create amazing content because of the camera that you have. It's probably not the case, because often the camera body, as much as we get fed with new features all the time with the new releases, it's not really where the magic happens. It's often in the surrounding elements around it. So a camera body is a must, but it's where I would save some money if I was just starting out. And I've slowly built up to having the ZV-E1 today, which is not even the most expensive camera. I could have had the FX3 or the FX6 cameras I would still love to use, but the ZV-E1 definitely does the job for me. And that leads us perfectly to the next thing on the list, a lens. Because if you have a camera body, you're also gonna need a lens. This is my favorite lens. This is the IRIX 65mm T1.5 Cine lens. It's not sponsored or anything. They did send me this lens and I've been creating content for them, but they're not paying me to say anything in this video or paying me to say anything in any other video. So this is a Cine lens, and it gives a very high quality, very sharp, but still cinematic looking image, and that's why I love this lens so much. But when I'm recording talking head videos like I am right now, I'm using my Sony 24-70 f2.8 G Master 2nd edition. Yes, that's the very expensive version. That was the one I decided to go with. A Sigma or Tamron could do the job just fine. But when it comes to camera and lenses, the lens matters a lot more than the camera in itself. So when you're deciding on your gear, instead of paying all the money on the camera body and then buying a cheap lens or getting a kit lens, I would downgrade the camera body to begin with and then get a better higher end lens, because the lens is probably gonna go with you through all the cameras that you have. And something like a 24-70 or some good primes within that range will do you very good for a very long time, compared to a camera body that you might want to switch out for some new features. Most of the lenses have very great autofocus if you need that, and that's more than what you need. This lens in particular don't even have autofocus. It's just a manual focus lens, but the image that comes out of it is amazing. So dealing with manual focus is something that I like to do with this, and it actually helps me in the content that I create sometimes. But that said, lenses is still quite low on the spectrum, on the list of what I would invest in first. Of course, as I said, a great lens is always a good investment, but you'll probably also switch those out down the line. So getting at least a decent lens, something like if it's Sony G lens or some of the mid-range lenses, are often a good choice. But the lens matters more than the camera body. That's mostly the conclusion from now. And while we're talking about lenses, the next thing that I 100% need in my content creation, in my videography and filmmaking, is an ND filter. And if you don't know what an ND filter is, it's basically sunglasses for your camera. When you're shooting video, you'll want your shutter speed to be double your frame rate as much as possible, because that gives you that natural motion blur that you can see now when I'm moving my hand around, and you can see that it's kind of blurry and not completely sharp. If your shutter speed is too high, that motion blur won't be there, and if it's too low, it'd be way too blurry. So having that sweet spot is good. If you're shooting outside when it's very bright or just in very bright conditions in general, this is a game changer. It's just a variable ND. I've used both Polar Pro and this is a freewheel. This is magnetic, which is why I opted for this one. I don't really like it because of some of the mechanics that it has, but it does the job. And that's where we're getting to with some of these things. It does the job, so it's perfectly fine for what I needed to. This is 3 to 7 stops, blocks the light, does the job, still high quality, so it doesn't diminish the quality when I put it in front of my expensive lens. And then I'm happy. But this is definitely a must when you're shooting at bright conditions. If you're shooting inside in controlled environments like I am right now, I don't have an ND filter on, and most times I won't need it unless it's bright light in the background. Next on the list is a tripod, and I have 2 tripods that I use mostly. There's the one that the camera is sitting on right now, the Peak Design travel tripod, carbon fiber something edition. It's more of like a photography tripod than a video tripod, and I don't really like how long it takes to fold it out and do all that, but I've had it for like 5 years, and it does the job of holding my camera in situations like this or in any other situation where I need a larger tripod. So there's not really any point right now in me upgrading it or downgrading it or doing something different. The only thing I will say with a tripod is that you need to make sure that it's something that can hold your camera, whether that's a small or large one, and it won't just easily tip over if you're shooting outside in wind or something. I also use this mini tripod from PGY Tech. I think it's called the Mantis Pod 2.0 or something. This one is just great if I needed to sit on a table, or my favorite feature of it is that it has this little hook. So sometimes I can hook it to like a shelf or something else where I can just like hang like this, door frame, and then I can get some cool top-down shots or just wide shots from above. I really like that feature from this one, and I actually use it quite a lot, so more than I imagined I would. We bought it primarily for kind of vlogging and for these situations as well, but I don't vlog that much, so I mainly use it for that. You definitely don't need 2 tripods. You can also just, if you need to put it on a counter or something, just put the camera with something underneath it and just be creative with how you're using the camera. But a tripod, something to hold your camera, is usually a must. And it's definitely a must for me, especially because I record a lot of educational videos for my course, for like this. So I need something that can be in eye height when I'm sitting down. Then we come to something that you can edit on. Again, if you're using a smartphone, you probably don't need half of these things because you're just shooting and editing and doing most of the things on the smartphone itself. It has a lens, all of that. But if you do have a camera like I do, a laptop is definitely a must. And if you are making more high-end production stuff or want to do that, then you probably need something more powerful than what you can do on a smartphone anyway. And I love DaVinci Resolve, which you probably know if you followed this channel for a while. So a laptop is a must. And this is one of the things that I will say you will want to invest a good amount of money in. The reason is that if you don't have a good machine to edit on, and it doesn't have to be a laptop, it could also just be a stationary machine. I like laptops because I travel a lot. But if you don't have something that's powerful enough to edit, if say you're shooting at 4K and it's choppy when you're doing playback, the rendering takes too long, if you put on a small transition, it kind of crashes. All those small things are things that I don't think about unless I talk to some of my students or someone else who's just starting out and maybe don't have the best computer. There's also color accuracy in the MacBook, which I really love because it helps with color grading both for photos and for video. So this is my MacBook Pro 14-inch M1 Max. I bought it in 2021. Just after it came out, and I have absolutely no desire and no need to upgrade it anytime soon. This is an absolute powerhouse with 32 gigabytes of RAM, and that's been more than enough for me. I think I even only have 256 or 512 gigabytes of SSD in there because I always edit off an external SSD. You can actually see that velcroed onto the back here, and normally I will have a cable running around that as well. So a laptop is something that is crucial to speed up your editing, your workflows, and just make it enjoyable to create something. Because as soon as you're done recording, a lot of the stuff that you're gonna do is editing. And if you get stuck in that process and you don't find that enjoyable, you're less likely to make something. Back to creating friction. So this is something that I don't really realize how good it is until I speak with someone who uses something that doesn't work for them. So highly recommend not necessarily getting this. Even the MacBook Airs with the good M chips these days can go a long way. I will say at least 16 gigabytes of RAM, preferably 32 gigabytes is my recommendation, but go with what you like. I love the MacBooks, I love that ecosystem, and I'm completely lost and caught in it, so I don't think there's any way out for me again. While we're at the computer and editing stuff, the next thing is a good pair of headphones. And this is crucial to me. Again, I travel a lot, so I often can't really edit off of just listening to the computer. And I highly just prefer having a good listening experience when I am editing, because I want the audio to sound as good as possible. And that's very difficult to do if it's coming out from the MacBook speakers or even just using my regular AirPods. It's not even the newest ones. So these are the Sony XM4 1000, whatever the naming is for these. I didn't go for the XM5 because these fold down more and come in this little carrying case that again is good for traveling. The noise cancellation is great in these. I can still hear when people are talking, which I found a little bit weird outside of it, but for planes and just for generally working anywhere, it's so nice to cancel out the noise around me, and the audio or the sound quality in these are so good still that I really love and I just enjoy editing with them. I do most of the time, or pretty much always, plug in the mini jack cable when I'm editing, just because I don't want any latency, and I do find that I get those with the MacBook and the Sony headphones. So AirPod Max might have been better, but they're way too expensive for this. So these are definitely doing the job for me, and I absolutely love these headphones. We have two things left on the list, and the next thing is the one that probably makes the biggest impact for me in terms of making my videos, and has made the biggest impact for me in terms of making my videos. It's a good microphone, and that can come in many shapes and forms. I really like these DJI mics. This is just the first version, so I don't have the fancy 32-bit float, which I sometimes wish that I had, but these definitely do the job for me. What I've ended up doing is putting them to -5 decibel. I think that's the right phrasing for them, and I just always record internally in the microphone. Another thing that I also have is a shotgun mic sitting on the Sony camera that I'm recording on, and I mostly use that for when I'm recording some of my more mundane or ordinary moment videos, and I want the audio of, say, the running water or the packaging scrambling with that, and all kind of sound effects that I would normally have to find. I can just record that in very high quality with that microphone. So I really love that. I also just use it for when I'm recording right now. It's sitting on my camera, and then it's just picking up my sound, and then I will also sync the audio in DaVinci Resolve with the microphone that I'm having on now. Another thing to add with the DJI mics is that I'm using this Shure lavalier mic. I found a YouTube video that tested a bunch of them, and this was one of the best ones for the DJI mics, something with transmission and stuff that I didn't fully understand, but I really love having this lavalier mic on. I wish I could hide it a little bit better. I've tried medical tape. I didn't find a good version of that, I think, and I still need to learn a lot more about audio in that department, but just having that clipped on here is kind of low profile, and it just gives such a better audio experience. And audio is so important. That's why I highlight this as one of the last things, and probably the most important thing on my list. You're much more likely to watch a video that has good audio but crappy video than the other way around. The reason is that if the audio is clipping and it just sounds horrible, you don't want to watch it. It's just, yeah, it's very distracting. Whereas if the video looked like something that was shot in the 80s, that could either be by choice, or it can still be fine as long as you can see what's going on and it's part of the story, or it still tells the story, then it's probably not a problem at all. So a good microphone is something that, depending on what you're recording, of course, I will say is pretty crucial, and it is crucial for me. And I do love having a combination of both the shotgun mic for recording all the Foley, all the different audio sounds that are happening when I'm recording. And I do love having this for when I'm recording something where I need to talk, a lesson or something like that. Also because it gives me the mobility to sit as far away from the camera as I want to and move around if I need to as well. So microphone, very important for me. You can probably get something like the first version of the DJI mic, or even the second version with the 32-bit float and the lavalier mic for not that much money, or something similar that will help your videos a lot. And then the last thing is lighting, or external lighting. And this is the last on the list, and it's probably one of the most important things, or the most important thing when it comes to leveling up your video quality. And for me, it's both a give and a take, because I often don't use my lights because I shoot a lot outside, I shoot a lot of run and gun, and I'm just not the best at lighting yet. But when I sit down and I need it, when I have space for it, I do love to put on my key light that's up here. And if we turn that off, then the frame would look like this. And when I turn it back on, then you get this. So it just allows me to control the lighting a lot more. Now I'm shooting in the evening, so the backlight in the window is not really an issue. But other than that, being able to control the lighting and not having that change from the external lighting, it's just a really nice thing. When I'm recording most of my videos where I don't sit down and talk, and even the most of the lessons in my course, I haven't been using an external light. For the most part, I will just use whatever light is available and then just work with that. And I do like the natural look and feel that that sometimes gives me, just shooting into the shadow. So lighting is one of those things that I will say it can be a must depending on what you shoot. And if you need to shoot a lot in dark places, if you need to shoot interviews and stuff like that, it definitely is a must to learn and to master in some way, to some capacity. But if you're shooting more run and gun, shooting outside, then an understanding of how light works and how you can work with natural light is probably more useful than external lighting in itself. So as much as it for me in some cases is a must or something that I need for my content creation and my business, I try to avoid it as much as possible because it just takes a lot of time to set up, to fold out, to dial in, to make sure it looks good. And if I need to move my camera around a lot to film different scenes and I film everything by myself, moving the light around at the same time will make it take not double as long, but like 3 or 4 times longer. So I'll rather lower the quality a little bit of how it looks if I can avoid using a light than spending the extra time on the lighting. And that's of course going to be a give or take for you. But when it comes to dumbing down things and simplifying my own filmmaking, I feel like it's a better trade-off to have it look slightly worse than to spend the extra time, because I can make 4 times more content, technically, than if I spent the time setting up the lighting. So I'd rather produce more and get better that way than spending the time on setting up the lighting if I don't have to. And those are basically the 8 things that I really need for my content creation. As you can hear, some of them are absolute must and something that I really think provides a lot of value. Some of the things are things that I had to save up for years or trade in for some other gear that I bought. And it's taken a long time to get to this point. And it's by no means perfect, but it gets the job done to a degree where I'm happy and where I can actually create what I need. And as much as I hope this video was helpful to you and just kind of showing what you do need and not necessarily all the other fancy things that a lot of people will show or tell that you can also use, which will definitely level up your videos in some degree. Monitors, gimbals, drones, other things, clamps, stands, whatever it might be. Those are all things that can help, but just make sure that if you get some of that, that it actually is going to improve and make you faster rather than slow you down and make a lot of excuses. And don't make the excuse that you can't make something because you don't have it. And on a last note, if you still feel a little bit overwhelmed or have a lot of excuses on creating stuff, maybe because your skill level is not there or just because you are a little bit lost in everything filmmaking, then I've just launched my new course, Mundane Filmmaking, which is focused around not producing the highest quality things, at least not in the beginning, but more practicing using ordinary moments and turning those into visual stories. And the whole idea is, again, to just dumb things down a little bit, simplify the workflow, simplify the process, and focus on the storytelling and what you actually want to do. And you can create videos and tell stories about basically anything. Making your coffee in the morning, reading a book, scrolling on Instagram if that's your hobby, watching a movie, it doesn't really matter. But what does matter is that if you use these ordinary moments that you do every day, one, it's something that you're very familiar with how you do it. So it's something that you can pretty much do on autopilot even if a camera is rolling. It's something that is most likely always accessible because it's something that you do on a daily basis. It's something that you can do inside the comfort of your home without disturbing anyone else, depending on your roommate and family situation, of course. And it's something that you can do and repeat over and over again, which makes it super good for practicing, because if there's something that's great for learning, it's repeating the process over and over again. You don't see any professional runners not having run the same route 1,000 times, a tennis player having hit the ball 1,000,000 times the same way, a football player having kicked the football into the goal 1,000,000 times. All of those things, all of those processes, they repeat over and over again. So why shouldn't we when we practice our filmmaking? And that's what the whole course, the whole community in there is about. It's just launched. You can check out the link in the description below if you're interested to learn more, and you're more than welcome to let me know if you have any questions. So with that said, those are my 8 things. Those are my, I I don't know, tips or recommendations, or at least what I use in my content creation and my business. So I hope that was helpful in one way or another. And other than that, until the next time, take care.